Okay, this is chapter 16 now. There's a lot of history in this chapter. Information about geography, information about the way Jewish society, what the people lived back in those days, about Jewish theology, the type of theology that Jesus grew up with. It's a long chapter, 40 pages, so I'm going to split it up into two parts. My voice will never make it through 40 pages. So there'll be chapter 16a and chapter 16b. This is chapter 16a, the demons of the storm. Replied Mahlir in response to his wife's question of what was heavy on his heart right before her departure to Arimathea for another visit with Jael. I don't know, since we moved to Jerusalem, it seems you spend as much time with Jael as you do with me. Mahlir rarely complained to his wife, but he was losing a piece of her. She sometimes spent days on end in Arimathea now that her friend was so close. God had chosen a good life for Mahlir of Matthias, and Mahlir cherished it, and he missed it when it was incomplete, when Rachel was away. He shared things with her that husbands, by tradition, never discuss with their wives. Politics, theology, even the secrets of the temple were things they shared. They truly were as one, agreeing, disagreeing, but always as one. They had the rare ability to be able to argue different viewpoints without getting angry. It was a bonding in itself, this ability, a twinkle-eyed smile present on both their faces, like a game was being played, especially with Rachel. With Rachel, the more powerful her argument, the more powerful her smile, with a now and then burst of profanity festooning her speech, which gave it all the more charm. The rioting and the uprisings in the land continued, though the insurgents were lessened in their numbers because of the increased presence of Roman soldiers, supported in their efforts by the strengthening of Archelaus's own military. And the frequencies of the burnings and rapes and kidnappings were tapering off. Jerusalem, at first the heart of the trouble, was now the safest place to be, or so reasoned Eli, because of the fortified walls and because of the soldiers. Their numbers were most massively reinforced in Jerusalem. For that reason, he had purchased for the four of them a house in Jerusalem, one close by the temple, not as big as the one in Caesarea, but much safer, with 3 chambers facing a long courtyard and with thick walls to keep out the bandits and the heat, and to keep the heat contained during the winter. It had a hearth, a charcoal stove of masonry, a bronze brazier for cooking and warming food, a roof garden where they slept on hot summer nights under the sparkling immensity of God's heaven, and of course a mikveh, smaller than the one in Caesarea, but effective, nice, all of it. The move was particularly pleasing to Rachel because she was now close to Jael, the town of Arimathea, being only an hour's walk away. They rented out the use of the mikveh during the festivals, as did many in Jerusalem, though in time the Sanhedrin mandated that the pilgrims were not to be exploited, that all had the use of God's city, and that no one had the right to take money for lodgings and baths. Eventually, it was decided that the people could charge, but only up to a certain ceiling as reimbursement for expenses. Rachel laughed with the moistness of her large brown eyes. "You're not jealous of another woman, are you, my love?" Come on. She knew he hated the emotions of jealousy. She knew he viewed it as a demeaning and domineering quality, one unworthy of a priest, a quality unworthy of their relationship. He could have forbidden her to go. He was within the law to do so. Eli sometimes would advise him to do just that. See, I'm already getting hoarse, only page 2. The law states firmly, said Eli, that a man should rule his household. And the law is from God, Eli would say. Yahweh knows what is best for his children. He knows that a home should have a leader, a husband who leads with courage and with wisdom for the benefit of his family, just as a monarch, for the benefit of his kingdom, leads with courage and wisdom and sets forth rules and delivers edicts. But such control seemed contrary to this special and unique relationship Mahlir had with his wife. It would have weakened it somehow. Maybe I am a bit jealous, just a little. But more than anything, I'm concerned for your safety, as is your father. The reason we moved to Jerusalem in the first place was for safety. Jerusalem has the soldiers, and it is further protected by the walls. Beyond the walls, you lose that protection. It simply is not safe. Mahlir put a hand on his wife's stomach, swelling more each day with the marvel of life. We have a third person to think about now. Their only sadness, The only unfulfilled part of their lives had been that they could not conceive children. Until now, after 5 barren years, the Lord blessed them, and Rachel was found to be with child. The little one filled Mahlir with joy as it grew in its unborn state, as he watched Rachel walk under its burden, as he felt its movements on his back while they slept, as he watched the love in her eyes. Arimathea is only 5 miles away, said Rachel. It's little more than an hour, and the soldiers are on the roads as well. There's an abundance of protection. Come with me this time. See for yourself. And besides, I would better enjoy Jael's companionship and friendship if you were there too. Perhaps you can develop a friendship with her as well. She's a very special person. I love her deeply. Her smile came to reassure, but of course not as much as you. Then she nodded toward the man towering above her, bare-chested and cut lean from hard work and the struggles of life, with bands on his enormous arms to accentuate their power, and with flowing trousers of wool patterned from the land of the Pharaohs. A curved scimitar and a jeweled case was attached to his waistband to further intimidate. Remember, too, that I have Benjamin for protection. And Mahlir truly was grateful that she did. I intend no disrespect, Benjamin, he said to the loyal eyes of the muscular sentinel, but one guard is no match for a band of thieves, no matter the power of that guard. Benjamin was silent. He was too new to realize that in this household a slave could converse openly with the masters and mistresses. He nodded to indicate he was not offended. Come with me to Arimathea, urged Rachel. She was bouncing on her toes with the excitement of it. She most often walked on her toes. It was probably what gave her calves that unique muscularity most women lack. I will be doubly protected, and I will have the pleasure of your company as well. I'm sure Joseph would appreciate it. The added security. Jael is alone in that big mansion now that Joseph is needed so much of the time in Jerusalem for the Sanhedrin deliberations. Benjamin again said nothing, but it was obvious by the way he looked at Mahlir that he also thought it was wise that Mahlir come along. All right, my love, Mahlir pressed a kiss on her forehead. I have temple duties, but they are ones that can just as well be done in Arimathea. Allow me first to go to the temple and gather my materials. I am copying scrolls. I'm sure they will let me take these scrolls with me, since they are only copies of copies. And so it was done. Mahlir would come as well to ensure her safety. But what was waiting for his precious wife now was something worse than a roadside thief, worse than a rapist, worse than a murderer. It was the last thing in the world she would expect. It was a thing no bodyguard alive could protect her from. It was a thing from the shadowland of nightmares, evil perpetrated by the very man she trusted most, the man God had charged to be her supreme protector, who had vowed to be so. Because beginning with this trip, starting innocently enough, Mahlir of Matthias would embark upon a subtle and deceptive road that would lead him to do the unthinkable. For reasons he would not understand, for reasons he probably never would understand, he would open the door and walk out into the storm. And the sirens of the sea would be there. They were gathering him in and making believe that he was in love with this woman, who was his wife's best friend, who was the wife of his father-in-law's best friend, this woman who at first he little more than despised. In their deception, the sirens would convince him that he could not live without this woman, that he was in love with both women, that he now had responsibilities to both. It started off slow, the opening of the door, with another smile, another glance, an innocent conversation, one too many moments alone with her. Little by little, inch by harmless inch, the door opened slowly, the curiosity allowing it still another inch, the attraction to the darkness drawing it further open, until suddenly, in one crashing moment, the door became impossible to shut against the force of the storm. And Mahlir found himself in its full fury, disbelieving of it, ashamed, fearful, sickened, yet unable in the enslavement of his senses to do anything about it. He was like a leaf in a hurricane, or so he thought. Had he the presence of an oracle to show him future events, he would have stopped it immediately. He would have in an instant swept aside the hurricane. Then he would have been able to protect his wife. He would have been able to take her away before the soldiers came. Over many trips it happened, many weeks, trips he kept telling himself were only for his wife's protection. Then suddenly he was there, looking back at this monster that was himself, that had mutated from such innocence. and Rachel knew nothing about it, though it was obvious from the vacant look that sometimes crept within her eyes that things were not as they used to be, that she was beginning to experience an unknown type of discomfort, moments of distrust that were never there before, that erupted for reasons unknown to her, that she dismissed as a weakness inside herself. Once she even apologized to Mahler for it, a time when she felt guilt for admonishing him for not being there beside her when she woke up one morning, when she found out that J.L. was also gone. "Fie, woman," Mahler had said. "It was nothing but a simple early morning walk, one that J.L. accompanied me on because she happened to have been awake at the same time." A simple early morning walk, a simple explanation, a lie that placed yet another stone in the wall being built between them. "Forgive me," she said, "for ever doubting you." The moistness was back in her eyes. She patted her bulging stomach. "Matthias is sorry too," she said. She always included the baby in her conversations. It was always we instead of I. She had already chosen a name, Matthias, in honor of Mahler's father, the priest who pulled down Caesar's golden eagle. She was convinced the child would be a boy and that he would do great things for the world. Nor did Eli know of his son's enslavement. Mahler was his friend, his son-in-law, his guardian, defender of his family against all evils, a man to take his place as patriarch to carry on his legacy. He and his son-in-law had become close, though their differences remained. Eli a Sadducee, Mahler a Pharisee, and though Eli still loved to make sport of intimidating him, they would journey regularly together to the heated bathhouses and discuss things, sometimes in agreement, sometimes arguing. Mahler was far from being high priest and probably never would be, but he served his duties to the best of his abilities. And Eli continued his campaigns in the temple for the annexation of Judea by Rome, appealing to anyone who would listen, held he high position or low, often to Mahler's embarrassment. Anytime Mahler would introduce him to somebody new, particularly a person of influence, Eli would launch into his political diatribe against Archelaus. Mahler would sometimes express concern over Eli's safety because Eli spoke so openly on the matter. "My safety is immaterial," Eli would boldly answer. Then he would state some variant of the following: "Why should I act as a coward? Cowards never change anything. If the ways of government are to be changed, people must speak, surely, dangerous though it be. One thing history has taught us, from the Macedonian to the Maccabees to the Caesars, the only way government can stand is if the people allow it to stand, no matter the power of the government." Nor did Jael's powerful husband know of the evil that had crept into his household. Joseph of Arimathea loved Mahler. He looked upon him as a son. He had taken him into his confidence and was training him up in the ways of things sacred, showing him the secrets. He even shared with Mahler personal thoughts, such as how blessed he was to have Jael as his wife. "To walk in the ways of righteousness surely does bring its rewards," he once said. "Jael could have any man she wishes, being beautiful and 20 years my junior. Yet she's chosen me. How good God is, and what a blessing it is that he has given me one who is loving and loyal. It's not so much that she is beautiful, a side benefit only. What matters is that she is a true and deep friend. I love her dearly." In Joseph's mind, the only threat to his family came from without, from the unrest in the land. To question otherwise would be absurd. Many an hour did he spend as mentor to the youthful Mahler, teaching him, explaining the mysteries, interpreting dreams, which is so often the way God speaks, he would say. Joseph, in his wisdom, always knew what a dream meant. Someday, he kept saying to Mahler, someday you too will have these lines of age and wisdom etched into your face. You too will be able to read a dream. There was only one time when Joseph of Arimathea was puzzled over a dream. It was a dream of his own. At the end of the dream, an angel appeared, Joseph told Mahler. "Ask young Mahler what this dream means," the angel told me. "He will know," Joseph laughed. "Now that's a switch. The student teaching the teacher. So I'm asking, what does it mean?" Mahler did not know, he told Joseph, but he did know. And its truth shuddered inside him. "My dream was this," Joseph had said to Mahler. The elder's eyes were like reservoirs of reflected fire in recounting the vision. Wisdom was in them, power was in them, kindness was in them, and it terrified Mahler as much as the dream itself. though Joseph attended it not to be as such, for his heart was pure. I dreamed of days gone by, he began. The dream was of you. You were a young child. I was charged with your care, and we were walking through the olive groves. I dreamed that on the rise of a hill there was a great bear in a cage. It was a loving animal with a docile face. You were saddened that it was caged. I was saddened as well. I, too, saw the docility of its expression. You reached in and stroked it and responded by rubbing its head against your hand. It was clear that the bear had been unjustly caged by the cruelty of men, as is so often the case, for entertainment most likely, for the games, who knows why, perhaps for no reason at all. Compassion poured from your young heart, and you withdrew the peg. Only a simple wooden peg, no bigger than a finger, separated this huge animal from its freedom, and opened the cage door just a crack, mind you. It poked its nose through and curiously sniffed the outside the way animals do, then rubbed against your hand. The touch of its fur felt good to you, and you opened the door a little bit further, only a little. Again the bear rubbed against you, and you opened the door further still. Not much, but it was enough, and the gentle giant turned ferocious. The soft hair in an instant stood to bristles, and the harmless face transformed into a raging mass of teeth that could crush bone. Eyes glistened with hatred. We tried to shut the cage, but it was too late. The bear was halfway through. In another instant, it was free. We tried to catch it. Such a powerless feeling it was, such an empty feeling, as we watched the bear bound away to tear to pieces everyone and everything in its path. It wasn't a bear at all. It was destiny itself, released to destroy things held precious. To chase him was of no use. He was 50 times the size of a man. If a sage such as yourself doesn't know, Mahlir said, how do you expect somebody like me to know? Mahlir asked it jokingly, trying his best to hide the nervousness disguised in his voice, for of course the bear was the destiny he was creating with his adultery, of the future he was altering, of the lives he was shattering. Mahlir's father-in-law had also been forewarned of danger, though not in a supernatural way. Shama had been in the baths of the Zygztra and had overheard some of the king's servants speaking of how the king was preparing to take revenge against those in the temple, planning a sedition against him. I want you to go away for a while, Eli told Mahlir and Rachel. It may be nothing, but just to be safe, pack your belongings. I am sending the two of you to Rome for a time until things stabilize. I have a villa there. But Father, what about you? Rachel asked. Eli tried to soften the seriousness of what was clearly a weight upon her mind. One could always tell the depth of Eli's concern over an issue by how much the left part of his white-brushed brow dipped with the squinting of an eye, as though he was looking inward and speaking as much to a presence there as to the one on the outside. Me? I will be fine. In any case, if I abandon my cause now, even momentarily, what would be the chance of succeeding ever? If Archelaus is worried, it is simply because he should be. It is because I am succeeding in my efforts to gather support against him. He indeed should be worried. No, I must stay. You both must go. You have yourselves to think about, your family, your unborn child, your future children, my legacy. You have no part in this. You must go. For me, you must do this. For my legacy. Mahlir agreed. We will leave tomorrow afternoon, before the sun sets. No, today, within the hour, Eli said, narrowing his left brow further. But I cannot. I have duties in the temple tomorrow morning. I have been chosen to enter the holy place. I have responsibilities of God. No, go now. Abandon your duties to the temple. It is too dangerous to wait. But I cannot. They are my commitments to God and to the people. If you must, but tarry not a moment longer, then leave in the morning immediately after your obligations. It shall be so. By the time the sun stands at its midpoint tomorrow, we will be on our way to Tyre. The day after that, we will be on board a ship bound for Rome. True, Mahlir had been chosen to present the atonement at sunrise, a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, wherein a priest is selected by the casting of lots to enter and view what few human eyes have ever seen, in the inner chamber, the resting place of King David's crown, and the Ark of the Covenant, both lost, but soon to be found, wherein is gathered the power and might of Yahweh, and from where the prayers of atonement for the people are offered, wherein a sinful man is not welcome, where the measure of a man's sins will be doubled if he is not clean when he enters. But that was not the real reason he wanted to delay his departure. The real reason was so that he could be with Jael, so that he could have one more last moment with her to break it off in a gentle way. An excuse for one more encounter? Perhaps. But it was the kind thing to do. It was what his heart demanded. He was relieved that the affair would soon be over. The burden of his deception had been at times more than he could bear. In less than a day, he would be free of it, and he and his wife would be on their way, he and the one set aside for him by God, and their unborn child. He would listen to the dream. He would push the bear back into the cage and put the peg in place while he still could. And then, upon their arrival at their destination, he would make a final atonement with an expensive and blemish-free heifer. He was thankful for the dream, and he was thankful for circumstance. Events unfolding had offered him a way of escape from the trap he had made for himself. Mahlir would never return to his old ways. He would not so much as allow himself a single temptation. He would never return to Jerusalem as long as Jael lived close by and as long as Archelaus remained as king. What he didn't know, what he could not know, was that midday tomorrow would be too late. The soldiers were coming in the morning.